Hello everyone, Simon Jacobson here. I'm going to be speaking about Addiction in Quarantine Part 2. I've received a tremendous amount of feedback and comments, positive, critique, insights, which is exactly the purpose of all of this, which is to create a dialogue, a discussion. That's when it's dynamic. When we're dealing with issues that affect our personal lives, it's vital that we are engaged in it. It's not just mechanical or technical information. So I really appreciate the feedback. Keep it coming. And hopefully together, the synergy of us talking about it, caring about each other, care, compassion, empathy is so vital in all healing and all recovery, because it also validates your journey. It validates your pain. It validates your challenges. It validates your shortcomings, and that itself is empowering. So much of addiction, so much of it is about feeling isolated, alone, feeling quarantined, feeling incapable, and not worthy of support and help. That is why the best counterforce is this interaction with each other. So what I want to touch upon in this discussion now is a second part to part one. In part one, we spoke about dissect the anatomy of addiction and replacing it with the word attachment. So there's attachment disorder, dysfunctional attachments, attachment to things or behaviors that enslave us and are unhealthy. And then there's healthy attachments, which is where it all is rooted from. The need and the early genesis of our beings, starting in our mother's womb, begins with healthy attachment, healthy connection, being engulfed, being immersed, being submerged in the embryonic fluids, being submerged in love later in life. All these nurturing elements are healthy attachments. When that has been severed in a certain way, we begin looking for attachment and often not in the right places. That's what we discussed, attachment. So therefore, one of the key ways to counter unhealthy attachments is to find healthy attachments and passionately connect with them, and they slowly will weaken the hold on the unhealthy version of those attachments. So that is a critical component in all of life, because you don't want just to be deprived of whatever it is that's satisfying you or giving you relief, even short-term and instant gratification relief. You need to find things that will fill you up. You can't just remain hungry and thirsty. So with that said, however, there's still elements in addiction that just because you find a healthy attachment doesn't suddenly make it easy for you to give up the previous attachment, because our habits are so powerful. The addiction is so strong that we gravitate back to it. Even when we have other positive outlets, we gravitate back. So is it enough to justify the positive attachment? So let's cite a Talmudic statement, and we'll analyze it from a mystical, spiritual, and psycho-spiritual approach. The statement is, in the Hebrew, Ein chavush mater es atzmei. In simple words, it means a person who's bound up, who's tied up, someone in fetters, that is an fetters, cannot untie themselves. Think of it, you're in a pit, and you can't climb out of the pit yourself. You need someone to throw you a rope, which means you are your own worst enemy at times, when we talk psychologically, because you are part of the problem. Your subjectivity, your weaknesses, your shortcoming. So can you save yourself? You can definitely acknowledge that I need help, and that's a critical component, but can you really throw a rope to yourself? Can a person untie themselves when they have the blind spots or they have the addiction, the attachment disorder to something that is very powerful? So one could argue that even if you do find positive attachments, since you have already developed habits and routines and very strong connections or attachments to different addictions, you can't just pull yourself out by having a positive one. Had you never gotten a negative addiction and your attachments were always healthy, so that would have continued in your life. The love of the parents would have been healthy to you, the nurturing, and then when you would begin looking for love, it would be of the healthy sort. But once we've already wandered off and we found toxic and other powerful forces to satisfy us, The argument can be, and it's a strong argument, is it possible just to say, okay, from now on I'm going to have healthy attachments? Especially considering that we ourselves got ourselves in that situation, can you just get yourself out? Just like a drowning victim, someone who's drowning in the water. If you're drowning, you can't stop yourself from drowning. As a matter of fact, if a lifeguard comes, often you'll pull the lifeguard down as well because you're so desperate. That's why you need to be trained as a lifeguard to know how to help somebody, because they can be doing something that's destructive to themselves, and even the help can become a liability. Which is why in the 12 steps, one of the key things is surrender. Recognizing that I'm powerless and surrendering myself to a higher power. Now this essentially really originates from the whole foundation of connection to God. When you look in the Torah, in the Bible, and especially, as I said, I'm going to explain it from a spiritual perspective, a psycho-spiritual perspective, the most fundamental principle, the first of the 10 commandments. There's 10 commandments, not 12, but 10. I am your God. I am the one that redeemed you from what? From Mitzrayim, which is from all your constraints, limitations, inhibitions, fears, addictions. The word Mitzrayim is a global word that can be meant, that means many things, but it includes also anything that traps us. It could be psychological, it could be behavioral, it could be objects, substances, it could be many different things. I am that one that freed you from that. What is the statement? That there's a divine power that is greater than us, that unties us when we're tied up. So when we surrender to it, it can lift us up. It can free us. Which is why you find in the process of healing and recovery, that type of let go, let God. Because as long as you hold on to your machinations, as long as you hold on to your own instruments and conventions to try to free yourself, it's still part of you. And since you're tied up, in this context, you're addicted, you're attached to the wrong things, you can't just free yourself. So comes the second component, and we'll soon talk about the need for both. A second component, in addition to healthy attachments, is to, yes, reach out. However one does that, whether it's through prayer, whether it's through faith, whether it's through crying, whether it's through pain, to reach to a power that's greater than ourselves, and I surrender to it, and help me, lift me up. And I will get myself out of the way. I won't allow my devices and my strategies and my distorted and misplaced intentions to get in the way. And allow a real, true surrender. It's not easy to do. The necessity of that is because there you're recognizing there's something more than you are. When you're talking about replacing an unhealthy attachment with a healthy one, it's still something you are figuring out. That is why it's so critical to have the access to this higher power. So, from a perspective of the way the mystics put it, they would say the following. Every soul, every psyche consists of two key components. One is our resources and our faculties. That includes our intelligence, our emotions, our instincts, our intuitions. It includes all our faculties. Those are your tools. That's your tool chest. Then there's another part of the spirit that is a transcendent component. The place where we reach to something greater than ourselves. That's like a sense of awe, a sense of respect, a sense of something beyond us, a higher reality. And both are necessary, especially the Hasidic masters explain. Why are both necessary? Because the first one is important because you need to be part of the process. You can't just surrender or else you will get annihilated. So you need to use your tools, your mind, your emotions. The downside of that is that they may have been tainted and somewhat prejudiced, or more than somewhat. So comes the second component, which gives you a strength outside of yourself, which is really part of your spirit as well. You accessing a transcendent element. That means you are suspending yourself in the presence of something greater. This is what happens anytime you stand in front of one of the natural wonders. You listen to music, a magical moment. You get absorbed in it. It lifts you up to another place. And then there's step one, or I wouldn't say step one. The first component is internalizing. So it's a constant process. Like think of climbing a ladder or conquering new horizons. First, you look up and you seek something beyond you. Then you internalize that through your faculties. And then, as you climb, now you see a new horizon to conquer. And it's a constant process of something beyond you and something internalized. Both are necessary for true recovery and healing because, as I said, the first one is about you. It's internalizing it. Without internalization, you will be lost in the process. The other, the transcendent, is about going outside of yourself. So in effect, when we said in the first of the 10 Commandments, if you read it closely, it says, I, the Lord your God. That's the way the English translates it. In the Hebrew, it means something completely differently. I, the essence of the divine, that's beyond transcendence and beyond immanence, connects the transcendent part of you with the immanent part. Bear that in mind. That's Anochi Hashem Elokecha. So there's the divine presence within us, within nature. Think of it like divine electricity. Then you have an element which transcends us. And that's what we reach out to for a higher power, accessing a higher power, to be able to lift us above our own swamp, our own limitations, our own mitzrayim, our own inhibitions, our own addictions. But then you need to join the two together. Because to just go upward and not inward is vital. But you want it to become yours because you want to transform your life. So in effect, in essence, if you think of it this way, we need both. We need the surrendering and accepting a force that's greater than ourselves. That lifts us to heights that we ourselves cannot lift us. To use an Einstein expression, you can never solve a problem from within the system where the problem was developed. So we need to reach outside of the system. But then you want to bring it into the system because you want your life to follow that higher power. And that's why we need to develop healthy attachments. You bring these two components together and you have yourself the formula. Now let's make it very clear. Nothing is easy. If it was easy, we wouldn't be speaking about it. Addiction wouldn't be such a problem. It's not easy because we're trapped. But that's why it's vital to have, we call the humility. In Hebrew, the word bittul, suspension of self, in order to accept something greater than yourself. And that can sometimes come through hitting rock bottom and recognizing that I have lost control over my life. I am not in control. There are things that are more powerful than I am. It's not an easy thing to acknowledge. The pride of a human being often resists that type of conclusion. But the key thing to remember is that surrender is not surrendering yourself like surrendering to an enemy. It's actually the greatest strength a person has is recognizing and celebrating their vulnerability, celebrating the fact that it's possible that we have shortcomings. When I say celebrating, I don't mean in a joyous way. I just mean owning it and recognizing it and dealing with it. But then, and this is the important component, that's not meant to remain outside of you. That surrender to that higher power, that in turn, paradoxically, internalizes it. You become an extension of that force. So in simple English, if you commit your life to, let's say, whatever it is that you want to be successful at, a business, a project, whatever it may be, and you're a very driven person. So yes, you can achieve, some people can do the work of 20 people, especially when you're passionate, but only 20 people. It's still a product, an outgrowth of your energy. However, when you commit to a cause that's greater than yourself, then you become an extension of that greatness. And that's why we have the ability to become immortal. It's a big word. Only when we connect to something that is immortal. As long as you're connected to your interests, for good or for bad, whether it's healthy ones or it's addictions, you can only go that far because it's an extension of yourself. But when you commit yourself, you get devoted to a cause greater than yourself, the love of another person, serving God, serving human beings, something that's greater than your self-interest, you then become a conduit, a channel of that greatness. So if that greatness is immortal, you become a channel for immortality. If that greatness is eternal and infinite, you become a channel for that. That is the secret to true perseverance, but more endurance and true growth. Because it's not about me. The universe does not orbit around you or I. We are vital in the process, but not because we chose to be. Because an immortal power chose to place us in this world with all our mortalities and our flaws and our weaknesses and our shortcomings and our mistakes. But you have the power to recognize that. Awareness is half the cure. And then to turn to that higher power and say, I surrender to you. And in turn, internalize that in attachments, in commitments, in service. That is also, but our healthy attachments. That's the secret. So in a healthy sense of the word, when you look at children, young children, coming out of their mother's womb, they have the healthy attachment. They recognize that it's coming from a place beyond them. And if that would just continue along, that would be beautiful. But life is not that simple. Things happen. Things happen. Attachments are severed. There's hurt. There's disappointments. There's duplicity. There's divisiveness. There's exploitation, molestation, predators. The list goes on. And they stunt and sever these healthy attachments, the ability to have both an internalized loving experience and a transcendent one. So the key then is that if things have been severed, have been compromised, now we need to retrace the steps and recreate what was missing on both ends. Healthy attachments and the connection to something greater. And interestingly, attachment to something greater is the healthiest form of attachment. So love, as they say, to love another is to see the face of God. To love another is to see the face of God. So when you connect and attach to God, that is the healthiest form of attachment, because that also extends. If you love God, you connect to God, you attach to God, and then you attach to everything that God loves, which is other people. Serving, refining your life, refining others. Not because you want to be a more refined person only, but because that's why you were sent here. So your attachment, your commitment, your devotion to fulfilling your mission in life, which is greater than you are, in turn informs and transforms you into becoming an agent, an ambassador of that change, and then in turn you become an extension of all the power that comes from that higher power, that higher reality, and you become an extension of it and spread it to everyone around you, which is why ultimately the goal is not just to we ourselves recover and heal, but we bring it to others. It's part of the process that whatever we have grown, we share with the others. That's part of our mission. God bless you all. May we all be able to have the strength, the courage to be able to acknowledge, to reach beyond ourselves, and also the courage to bring it back home into ourselves, reclaim our true destiny, our true connection, our healthy attachments. And it's always an honor, especially people who've been through the challenges. There's a certain refinement that emerges from that. So, thank you for allowing me into your lives a bit, and I hope, and I allow you into mine. Let's stay connected. Let's stay attached in healthy ways. Any way that I can be of help, we can be of help. Please just share, like, respond. I'd love to hear your comments and feedback. God bless you all. Stay strong. Stay healthy, both physically, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. We'll see each other soon again. Thank you.